Okay, okay, we are now live. Monk Radio, Saturday, September
6th.
6th, 2014. And I'm here with my loyal assistant, Robin, who is coming to meditate with us. She's flying from Connecticut tomorrow. We'll be glad to have you. We've got right now 2 other meditators, one from Florida and one from the Ukraine, who now lives in Toronto. And that's so we'll have a full house. I thought maybe I'd go over a little bit of news for those people who are tuning in to just some updates here. The first one is that our Indiegogo project is complete. It ended a couple of days ago with great success. We raised over the amount that we were expecting. And the robes, the last word I had was that the robes were actually cheaper than we thought. First they were going to be too expensive, and now they're cheaper. So we're going to go with 108 robes sets. And for those people who asked to have a name put on the robes in dedication, I think hopefully in the next few days we're going to send out a group email to invite people to send us the name they want on the robes, or the message, or whatever it is that they want to put on the robe set. Yeah, so that's great. That's going to be a neat thing to see when we show up at my teacher's monastery with 108 sets of robes. Robes, for me, it's people are kind of wondering why we're doing this and why we choose this exactly. But on the one hand, it's symbolic personally because it represents monasticism. And so for me, that's Buddhist monasticism has been a great thing, and it's a wonder that one is still able to dedicate one's life and in such a way to the Buddhist teaching. So for me, it's something that I like to keep in mind and set in my mind in sort of with these kind of symbolic gestures. But practically speaking, there's something interesting about this one in particular. Offering robes is a means of supporting monasticism. So sometimes I've heard complaints of monks that they can often feel marginalized or unsupported, feeling like society doesn't support them. Often society wonders why they're wasting their lives when they could be productive members of society, contributing to all the wonderful benefits of materialist society, instead of wasting their time with such useless matters as spiritual enlightenment. And so offering them something that has value and has real true benefit to them, kind of when they see it in their hands and that they've been given something that shows support, can be a great thing, and it can actually in certain cases incline them more towards staying as a monk if they were thinking about leaving and feeling discouraged. It provides encouragement, especially considering that the end of the rains, which is the time when we'll be offering these robes, is traditionally the time where monks will disrobe. They finish the rains, and if they were going to disrobe, they will say, well, I've finished the rains, now I'm free to leave and go back to the home life. But then they get these wonderful robes and they look at them and they think, oh wow, people actually support what I do. And well, it may be romantic, but there is the idea that it will encourage them to stay in the robes. So my hope is that this sort of thing is a hit and in some way supports Buddhism and Buddhist monasticism. Speaking of romance, we have this wonderful Italian music in the background. It's not being, if you're wondering, it's not coming from the monastery, it's coming from the Italian restaurant across the street. So just in case that was confusing. I'm going to to Vancouver on the weekend of the, oh heck, I don't know, is it September? Yeah, so the weekend of the 19th, 20th, 21st. I'll be away from, I think, the 19th, 20th, and 21st, and then I'll be back here. So if you're in Vancouver, oh whoa, I even got it here. Flight to Vancouver. Oh, sorry, I was wrong. 25th, Thursday the 25th. 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th is when I'll be away, back on Sunday the 28th. So if you're in Vancouver, drop us a line, and it's this, I think I'll be at the Sri Lankan Buddhist Vihara in Vancouver. The trip to Asia is happening. I'm the one who's going to have to be presenting the robes, so I sure hope it's happening. And it's shifting a lot. So the latest plan, in case you're interested in these things, is to go to Thailand for 1 month, be in Thailand for only 1 month, and then sometime in mid-November go to India. And we're going to do a pilgrimage and spend some time in India. Maybe I'll be there up to a month, I don't know. And then head, and here I'm not sure, either head to Sri Lanka from India or head back to Thailand and then Sri Lanka. But it looks like I'll be hitting 3 countries: India, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Still be coming home. For now, the date is set to mid to late February. I think, do I have it here? December. No, I don't have it. Anyway, February 18th or so, be heading back to Toronto. And from Toronto in February, see, the thing is that in February in Toronto isn't that inspiring. There's not much you can do in Canada in the winter. I could just stay here and do my thing, but I am kind of thinking about going to America or maybe the UK, maybe Europe. I was just talking to someone about maybe going to Sweden, and I know I have friends and students in Finland, so maybe a Scandinavian tour is in order. And it's not far from there to the UK either, so we'll see. Anyway, so that's trip news. I don't want to go on too long with that. Let's get right into answering questions, okay? I'd like to spend more time in this session answering canned questions. So I put up the Q&A live question thing, but I may not pay it too much attention. So we're going to go back to Google Moderator and try and get through some of the 84 questions that are there. We won't do videos for all of them, but we'll pick and choose the ones that seem to merit a video. And my wonderful assistant Robin will be asking the questions. So this first one I think we'll do a video for, because it seems to be something that would actually benefit people to have an answer to. So you ready, Robin?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Suicide is a big problem among troops returning from the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. Can Vipassana help those who have experienced the horrors of war come to terms with their experience? Would it be too risky without a teacher's guidance?
Okay, there's 2 issues that are interesting to me here. The first one is the question of whether meditation can be risky. Meditation can, in certain instances, trigger, and by meditation, throughout this, I'm going to be talking only about the meditation I teach, okay? So we have to be clear that what I say doesn't apply to all meditations, for sure. Some meditations are extremely dangerous, and from my point of view, but specifically speaking about the meditation teaching that I practice, it is admitted that it can trigger certain dangerous mind states that are already there, that are lying dormant inside. But far and away, the most like, how do I say this? In the vast majority of cases, like 99% of the time, meditation won't be dangerous at all. This meditation will only serve to help any condition across the board. So the question of danger almost never comes up in this meditation tradition, if it's A, taught correctly, B, practiced correctly, and C, maybe understood correctly, but understanding, of course, informs your, let's just say, if it's understood by the meditator correctly, whether that comes from yourself, or it comes from a teacher, or from books, or whatever. So the question of whether one can do it without a teacher is a little bit more interesting, because obviously the most likely place to gain confidence and understanding in the practice is from a teacher. So if you don't have a teacher, where are you going to get this understanding? How do you make sure that your meditation is proper? I would still say, well, I mean, the biggest answer here, or the biggest point to be made here in this regard, is that this meditation is incredibly easy to understand. There isn't much room for error. Basically, what I'm trying to say is it's not something you should worry about. Risk, oh, maybe I shouldn't practice meditation because it's too risky. I think it's it's an invalid, or it's an improper thing to suggest or to think. The meditation's innocuous. It's more or less harmless. It's not something that's going to hurt you. The worst thing that happens in this tradition is people get bored, turned off, afraid of the meditation, and stop meditating. That's far more common than any sort of risk, because you're not creating anything in this meditation. You're just looking at what's there. And if there's horrible things there, you just don't want to look at them. It doesn't happen that you get excited about looking at them. If there's no harmful things there, then it's easy, and the meditation proceeds smoothly. But the question of whether it's risky is not one that I would be interested in entertaining. Now, for people who have PTSD, this is the second interesting aspect of this question, is what is PTSD? And what happens when a person who has PTSD practices meditation? And I think we have to broadly separate this into two categories of people. Those people who have experienced traumatic events passively, and those people who have been active participants in creating traumatic experiences. And being specific, those people who have done horrible things themselves versus those people who have just experienced horrible things. From a Buddhist point of view, there's a big difference. Our claim is that it matters quite strongly whether you've done bad things or whether you've just had them happen to you. Now, it may not seem like that. At first blush, it appears to be the same thing. You are traumatized either way. So that is how it feels, how it appears on the outside. What you'll find is that's really only the shell of the problem. That's fine. In the beginning, it's all going to look the same. As someone who's experienced trauma, whether they were the one causing it or whether they were the victim or the perpetrator, there's little difference on the surface. But once you dig in deep, and once the person begins to get the hang of the meditation, that's where the two paths veer apart um, to a great extreme. A person who has experienced great trauma, no matter how great, um, is quite capable of progressing in the meditation, of healing and finding themselves and finding balance and becoming centered. A person who has done horrible things is far less likely to find that sort of balance and center. They have a corruption inside. They've been hurt deeply by their own actions. Um, the guilt that a person who's actually done bad deeds feels is far more real, visceral, intense than a victim who feels guilty or someone who feels guilty for whatever other reason. I had a woman who was raped by her father when she was a child, and she came to me when she was 40, and she looked like a ghost. And I've told this story before, but she was one of my greatest success stories, and I didn't do anything. I had no idea what had happened to her. I just knew that she came in, she looked like a ghost, and had something she wanted to get off her chest. I mean, I guess she'd gone to therapists, and the idea was to always tell, and they would always ask what happened. I didn't ask. I wasn't interested. And I kept her in the present moment, and when she was crying, I said, just be mindful of crying. It doesn't really matter why you're crying. Be aware of the sadness. Be aware of what's happening now. Anyway, long story short, after a couple of weeks, she looked like a different person. She left. She was smiling and totally relieved. She came back and she had color in her face. She looked human again. It was really, she looked like a ghost when she didn't look human when she first came in. And when she left, she looked alive. A person who has committed bad deeds, there are cases where a person can make a mistake and realize their mistake. But a person who has systematically and intentionally engaged in warfare, killing other people, there's something deeper there that you won't see at first. It's not readily apparent. The person might seem functional in society, but there is something that once that outer layer is peeled off, you see the poison, you can see the corruption in their mind, and that's much more difficult. It can be healed, of course, but it's much more difficult. Now, these people are the ones for whom it is dangerous no matter what, and even with the teacher has to be careful, because these people are susceptible to exploding, wreaking havoc on the meditators in the meditation center and attacking the meditation teacher. I mean, there are stories of this where a meditator has some commit suicide. There are these are the problems. So I don't have a quick solution for that one, and I think we have to separate the two out. And the best thing that comes from that, I think, is a cautionary warning to people, anybody thinking of going into the army, anybody of thinking of going into the armed forces of any type. You can't really go back. There's a long, long road to get back to the state where you before you had done the terrible things that are done in war or any profession where killing is involved, even police work. Becoming a police officer is, well, if you ever have to kill, it's hard to go back. So people who have PTSD, who are traumatized, these sorts of people, I think we should focus on. Well, let's make 2 points here. The first point is those who have done, in regards to PTSD, for those who have done bad deeds, we have a very difficult and long road. And these people, if they're committed, then go for it. But they have to be careful themselves, because their minds are going to be twisted, and they'll be inclined to react improperly in the same for the same reasons that they reacted improperly before, by killing, by hurting, by harming others. And as a cautionary tale for those thinking to do it, who think that killing is just an act and it's just one moment, and you can decide anytime, oh, I'm not going to kill anymore. It doesn't really work that way. What's done is done. A life can never be given back after it's taken. And the other point is in regards to those who have PTSD from seeing death, seeing horrible things, maybe even experiencing trauma such as rape or torture, starvation, whatever, and any kind of horrible thing that the side effects of war. For these people, we have much more hope. Just one anecdote I want to say in regards, before I forget, in regards to the first group. I spent some time with a man who was in war when I was in California. He was married to a Thai woman, so he drove us around a little bit. And he was probably the most horrible person I've ever had the pleasure of spending, of being in close quarters with. He said that people asked him what he missed most about being a soldier, and he said being able to kill people. I think he meant it, because his attitude to things was horrible. The jokes he told were racist and really cruel and awful. And yet he would be sitting there. Yeah, I think he was on heavy medication, if I recall correctly, for PTSD, I guess. But he was a sergeant. Anyway, so that's what I think of in regards to this first group of people who have actually done bad things. It's quite difficult to ever hope to get to them. Something that we should think about. The second group, those who have experienced the trauma, I don't see much problem in letting them meditate on their own. I would think if they have good theory and basic meditation practices, absolutely I would go for it. I would encourage them to pick up a book, start meditating, preferably in the tradition that I teach. Pick up my book. It's the one that I plug. It's the one that I encourage. But absolutely, in this meditation tradition, I can pretty much guarantee that, not 100%, but 99% guarantee that nothing bad is going to happen, and you'll only start to understand your problems better. In fact, the more you learn, the more you read, the more you study, the more you'll be able to deal with fear, anxiety, stress, paranoia, etc. And be able to overcome all sorts of stress. I mean, if this woman who was raped by her father can do it, it's hard to find something worse than that. Any thoughts, Robin?
No, it's a good way of looking at it.
Okay. Did we flag that one?
I will take care of that right now.
I gotta get my teapot. Is that Bill? Bill, are you there?
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Any thoughts? Have you been in the Army?
No. I look like it, but no.
Good for you. Do you know anybody who's been in the Army? Armed Forces?
Yeah. I have friends who are still in the military.
Do you know anybody who actually killed someone?
Yeah, but I don't talk about it with them. It's not a common thing for them to talk about, so I don't.
Yeah. Do you notice anything though? Like, does it seem to affect them when they've?
Yeah. One was an educator, so he would actually go to schools and talk about things, and he actually had to prepare himself to go back, I guess, to those days and
Yeah, I'll bet.
certain things. So I imagine some of those things were pretty horrible.
Hmm. I can only imagine. I remember I killed a deer once. This is my story. I've told it many times. And I thought it would be harmless. I had no idea that killing was such a big deal. So who does? I mean, who thinks that killing actually harms you? I guess a lot of people do. I didn't. I mean, I do now, obviously. I do now viscerally. But I had this crossbow and I picked it up. I had no thought that killing was wrong. I thought it was a good thing what I was doing. I picked it up and my whole body started shaking and I could barely pull the trigger. I had no idea where it was coming from, but it was really, I didn't want to do it.
Our next question is actually a little bit along these lines.
Okay,
Killing
go for it.
animals.
Are you looking at the canned questions?
I am, yes.
Uh-huh.
Hello, my name is Christopher. I have a question. Is it wrong to put a dying animal down? In other words, is animal euthanasia against the 5 precepts?
You should just say, in regards to the precept that says you're not allowed to kill any living being, does that include killing animals? I mean, it's a simple question, but you're couching it in all sorts of euphemisms, which isn't really fair. You know, the precept says, I undertake not to kill a living being. Are animals included in that? I'm giving you a hard time. But you know, let's play devil's advocate and assume that there are some premises in here that support this, such as the animal is suffering terribly, and the killing is in order to relieve them of their suffering. Now, if only that were the case, you know, if death were the end of suffering, then by all means we should euthanize ourselves. But it's not. Death is a doorway, and if you go through that doorway with a clear mind, having settled your debts and your matters and your affairs, then you can expect happiness after death. But if you go to death in debt, with your matters not settled, with your mind confused, then you're not likely to go. It's not a good door that you're going to open, that you're going to walk through. So I've talked about this before. I wish I almost wanted to do a video here, but I think I've already talked about this.
You do have a good video on euthanasia, but it dealt with people. So I'm wondering if maybe if the person thought the fact that it's an animal who maybe isn't in the same position of trying to, you know, have all their affairs in order, have their, you know,
Right.
be in a good place mentally. Maybe that was the difference for that person.
Yep. Well, what I've said before, and what I was going to say here, is that I've said it before. People who work in hospice care will tell you a person's last moments are very interesting. Not always, but or not always evidently interesting, but sometimes quite clearly, it's the last moment that really does count when the person dies, because they could be muddled and unconscious, and in the last moment everything becomes clear. Their face clears up, their eyes brighten, and they're sometimes able to speak just for a moment to get their last words out, but some kind of natural end comes to their life. And over-medicating is another dangerous thing, but definitely euthanasia, no matter what the being is. I had this argument a long time ago with one of my friends, because there was a seagull he found that had been hit by a car, and he wanted to kill it. And he picked up a rock and he was going to drop the rock on it or break its neck or whatever, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't bring himself to do it, and he felt really bad, and he was upset at himself because he knew it was the right thing to do. And And we argued about this, and then, interestingly enough, that same night, later on, we went to visit a friend, and we were talking to her about her mother who passed away. And she said at the last moment her mother brightened up, and it was like she was finally come to terms with everything and was ready to go on. And they thought it was really wonderful that happened. People who work in hospice can tell you that this sort of thing happens apparently quite frequently. Maybe not all the time, and it's not always evident what's going on in the person's mind. But if they're not heavily medicated, then they can leave the world in a good way. And so I argued with her. I said, well, what do you think about that? What do you think is going on with this seagull? Letting it deal with this situation. We're not, in Buddhism, really concerned about suffering. We're concerned with the person's reactions to it and the result of it. And so if the seagull, in the case of the seagull, is put out of its misery before it's able to fully comprehend and accept and let go of the experience, it's not really that you're doing the being any favor. The same goes with animals. With pets, it's even, I think, even worse because of our negligence in, let me see if it's negligence. Maybe not exactly, but I think pets in general are, yeah, it's not exactly negligence, but it's our ignorance, willful ignorance, because you get a pet and you accept this, but you take the easy way out. You don't accept the fact that taking on a pet is really a serious thing. It really does mean taking care of it until its death. But we don't accept that. We want the easy way out, and so we terminate it when it loses its, when it gets to the end of its expiry date, we end it, we finish it. And this is because it's expensive and it's taxing to have to look after an animal. I would say the real answer is to stop having what we call pets. I don't think it's ethically sound to have a pet. Maybe a fish, I don't know. If you get it a big enough tank, fish they just die, Or a pet where there's not that potential for having to euthanize them. I'm going to kill them. The word is kill. It's not euthanize. Mercy killing. I guess euthanize means mercy killing, right? So it does have a specific meaning. Anyway. Next question.
Canned question? Sure. If the world can't produce a Buddha due to the state of society at present, and assume rebirth is a fact, what are your thoughts on putting off Nibbana in order to contribute to the betterment of the planet and society? How should one approach that?
That makes my brain hurt. The world can't produce a Buddha, right? It seems like what do you call, a non sequitur. I don't see how the premise relates to the conclusion. Like, who cares if it can't produce a Buddha? What does that have to do with whether you should go to Nibbana or not? Nibbana doesn't make you a Buddha. Ever. So, what's the significance of the fact that society cannot produce a Buddha? Is that a valid answer? I mean, put off rebirth if you want, but don't use that as an excuse. Now, put off enlightenment if you want, but I don't think that should be your excuse, that because we can't have a Buddha, how does it relate?
Wouldn't it also be, if you're trying to make the world a better place, your own practice may contribute to making the world a better place as well?
Absolutely. An enlightened being is a far greater benefit to the world than an unenlightened being. So that's, we could get into that, but it just seems like the argument is flawed from the get-go before you even get into the merits or demerits of putting off enlightenment. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about putting off enlightenment to become a Buddha, well, that's something. It's just very, very difficult something. If you have the will and the motivation, you can try. It's a very, very difficult thing. Ask yourself, do I have what it takes to become the President of the United States of America? And then multiply it by a gazillion, and you're still not even close to how hard it is to become a Buddha. Next question.
I like this one. I've had this question for some time. I'm not sure if it's even relevant to practice, but I can't seem to shake it. How does new life come to be? Is any life new at all? It seems the human population is growing. Are any new?
Yeah, the whole human population is growing thing is a real red herring, because the overall number of beings on Earth isn't influenced by 5 billion humans, 10 billion humans. How many insects there are in the world, I'm sure it's far greater. The fact that humans are increasing doesn't really mean that much. As for whether life is new life comes to be, I have no idea. That's my answer.
Can I grab a question that's similar, but that was way down on the list?
Sure.
It's kind of similar. Maybe it's the same answer.
You've got this. What do you call it? I give you. Do it.
Okay. Are new minds being constantly formed, or is there a specific, limited amount of existing minds?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's an answer. How long should one practice meditation before making a decision to become a monk?
Well, there's lots of questions like this. And in the sense that they're all answered by saying that it depends from person to person. And you really have to... This falls into the category of questions that have to be answered. Depends on you. Because of that, we like to feel the meditator out for a while before we let them ordain. So let's force them to do at least 1 month. But totally depends on the person. In many cases, that won't be nearly enough. In some cases, it's not necessary. But much more important, I think, is finding the right place to ordain, the right tradition to ordain in, and then just going with their guidelines. Because you might not need any meditation before you take your ordination. Someone else might need a year. But they won't. The tradition that you're ordaining in, they won't pay any attention to that. Or sorry, they won't be able to decide that. So they have to, in most cases, they have to make you undergo meditation practice. Unless they can read your mind and see what's going on in your heart, they're going to have to put you through a specific regimen. So often it's a month or 6 months or a year. Depends on the organization. Okay, but there's another way we can answer this question, and that's to say, how do you know when you're ready to ordain? And my rule of thumb these days that I would recommend to people is when you're 100% certain that you're ready to ordain. That's when you should ordain. If you still have doubts about it, then you probably aren't ready to ordain. It's not to say that just because you're 100% certain that you're ready to ordain, that you aren't going to disrobe. It could be that such a person still disrobes, but If you're less than 100% certain, it's the likelihood of your disrobing is much higher. There's a good likelihood that you're going to disrobe. It's hard for a person who is uncertain to stay in it as a monk. It's a bad sign. You know, if you're not certain from the get-go, it's a bad way to start off. So you should meditate until that certainty arises. It may never arise. Maybe you never find the way to ordain. Of course, the other thing is some people want to ordain and never have the opportunity. It's strange like that. If you don't have a certain requisite karma, good karma, then you never have the opportunity. Some people just are unable to. Next question.
What do you think about poetry? Does it have a place in Buddhism? I've seen many examples of the Buddha speaking in prose. I'm not sure what to think because all other forms of entertainment, music, dancing, plays, etc., are advised against.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're using the wrong word here. When the Buddha speaks in prose, that means speaking like the rest of us. Like I'm speaking in prose right now. I'm pretty sure poetry is the opposite of prose. So what they really mean is, I've seen many examples of the Buddha speaking in poetry. Am I correct? Anyway, that's nitpicking. It doesn't really matter. I think I know what they mean. So the Buddha would speak in verse sometimes. The question is, what's the meaning there? What's going on there? But one thing about poetry is it's memorable. It's something that sticks with you, right? So a lot of the Dhammapada verses, in English, they may not be that memorable, but in Pali are very memorable. Like, just off the top of my head, well, the first one, Mano Pubangama Dhamma Mano Seta Mano Maya Manasati Padutena Bhasati Va Karoti Va Tato Nang Dukkaman Veti Chakung Va Vahato Padang. It just sounds poetic. Napare sang vilomani, napare sang kata katang, attanova avekeya katani akatani cha. It sounds fluid, and this helps you to memorize it. It helps you to be able to remember it. It makes it very easy to remember. There's a rhythm to it. There's alliteration in it, and that kind of thing aids in making it memorable. It also increases the emotive value, which can be dangerous, but could also potentially help to inspire. If you give a long and technical talk about something, you often don't get as much benefit as when you just say one pithy saying, sort of in poetic language. It often hits people, it wakes people up, it inspires people. So yeah, I think definitely poetry has a place. What doesn't have a place is singing, because singing doesn't seem to have any tangible benefit to it. It only creates desire and attraction. I wouldn't agree that you could argue that music inspires. I don't believe that. But poetry, I think, can help to inspire. And poetry can also be harmful. It can lead you to be attracted to it, attached to it. But I don't think it has the same sensual, because it's not a sensual attraction. It's an attraction to the idea, which can be useful. Obviously, love poetry would be a problem. No? Bad ideas that are sensual can give rise to sensual desire. Next question.
During meditation, I witness the arising of pain and it subsiding away. At what point in practice does this witnessing lead to penetrative insight? It still feels very conceptual, even though I am technically witnessing arising, passing away with metta.
With metta, I think it's just the...
Okay.
Oh
yeah, there is punctuation there.
Yeah, not very good punctuation, but it's there. You need all 8 path factors, and you need the 5 powers. The 5 faculties have to become the 5 powers. So yes, you're on. If you're seeing that, you're on the right path. That's great. It's not intellectual. It's just weak, and so it's being subsumed, or it's being overwhelmed by the intellectual aspect of your mind. That's what's happening there. What you need to do is cultivate the 5 faculties, balancing confidence with wisdom, balancing effort with concentration, strengthening through mindfulness, cultivating the 7 bojjhangas. I mean, basically, it just takes time and effort, intensity. It's like saying, you know, I put this water on the stove and it got hot. Why isn't it boiling yet? It needs more heat. You just have to work harder. And you have to get to the point where and not only the point, but you have to include all of the 8 path factors. They all have to be supporting each other, and they all have to be working together. So sometimes if you're practicing and you still have wrong view, if you're practicing and you still have wrong thoughts, if you're practicing and you still have wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong concentration, wrong mindfulness, we have to correct all of that. That would have made a good video, I think. That's an interesting one. Anyway. So basically just means that your insight is too weak. It has to be really strong. It has to be really mind-blowing. You know? Totally all-encompassing, where you just get it. And it's very, very strong. That's all. We have a whole bunch of live questions. Maybe we should switch to them. We got through 5, I think, of the canned ones. More than that, right? Let's go through some canned ones. More canned ones because we got lots of them to go through. Okay, keep going. Oh, where did your audio go? You're muted. I don't hear you. Technical difficulties in Connecticut. Okay, I'm going to go through some of these because they're pretty simple. In many of your teachings, the core idea is to let go of clinging. Wouldn't it be contradictory to apply such teachings in a materialistic life, which is based on clinging? Are your teachings applicable only to those following the enlightenment path? Yes, indeed. Why would you think otherwise? This isn't something that is useful for people who are clinging or who are interested in the materialistic life. You there, Robin? Still no sound. Oh, now you're gone. How different is curiosity from tanha? Once Venerable Moggallana was trying to find the bounds of the universe using his jhanic powers, but got lost in space as a result. Then the Buddha sent a beam of light to help him find his way back to Earth. I don't really know that story. Doesn't even sound familiar, but maybe it's. I wouldn't. Doesn't mean I know all the stories, but it sounds familiar to. It sounds similar to the one about Rotisa, Rohitisa. I can't remember this. I don't think it's Moggallana though. Although there may be a similar story about Moggallana, and I may have actually read it and forgot it. So in the case of real true curiosity, I would say it is probably tanha. But there can, I would bet, can be functional curiosity in the sense that it's habitual. It's just something that is there. So instead of walking for alms that day, Moggallana goes looking for the edge of the universe. And so he's not attached to the idea of finding an end of the universe, but he just happens to do that for a day. And it could be because the idea comes to him that it would be helpful for people to know, or it might be a chance for the Buddha to teach that there is no end to the universe, or whatever. I don't know. But it could also be that he still had clinging, and that wouldn't be the case with Moggallana, I suppose, because he had no clinging. Anyway.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Is meditation a way to overcome overthinking? I'm feeling very confused and not able to organize my own thoughts and beliefs.
Yeah, it helps you sort out your thoughts. It doesn't mean you won't think, but definitely overthinking. Overthinking means excessive thinking that is beyond what is necessary, right? Beyond what is beneficial. So definitely that is done away with through the practice. A person begins to think only what is as is necessary, and their thoughts are focused and ordered through the practice. It comes through a simplifying of your interactions with the world. So instead of making 10 things out of something, it's only one thing. It is what it is. The closer you can get to seeing things as they are, just seeing is seeing, hearing is hearing, smelling is smelling, obviously the more orderly and simpler your thoughts are going to be. You're going to be far more in the present moment, far more aware of what's going on around you, alert to the things that are going on in your own mind and in the world around you. And you'll develop wholesome habits. The chaos in the mind will subside. Okay, next question.
Hi, Venerable Sir. I would like to ask if people use force to enforce their religion, for example, the extermination of Afghanistan by Muslims. What do we Buddhists do? Just convert to another religion or let them kill us?
Depends what converting to another religion means. I mean, there are ways to get around the issue. Like if they just say become Muslim or die, you say, okay, I'm a Muslim. If that's all it takes, then fine, become a Muslim, no problem. But if it means saying things, deliberately lying, or saying that you believe things that are wrong, denouncing Buddhism, spitting on a Buddha image, you could get away with spitting on a Buddha image, I think, because you don't need to do that disrespectfully. You can do that just functionally. But when you have to actually mislead the person, lie to them, and say something that you don't believe, tell them, I believe that Allah is the only God, and yada, 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 then I think it gets difficult, and I think allowing yourself to be killed is often the preferred way, preferred path. I mean, don't worry, the human world is not the only realm. A person who keeps their mind clear even up to the moment of death only goes to happiness. Good question, though. Next question.
Is mindfulness of dream and sleep the same as lucid dreaming? If you say no, shouldn't technically being mindful in dream entail that one is also aware that he's dreaming, in other words, lucid, because of the self-awareness during the meditation in dream and sleep?
Yeah, except that dreaming is already a kind of a distraction. The state of mind when one is dreaming, the reason for dreaming is because the mind is not present in the body. You see, an enlightened being apparently doesn't dream. I mean, practice meditation and you can see that this is true. When the more a person practices meditation, the quieter their mind is, and especially when they're meditating. they'll find that their dreams become more infrequent because they're mindful. You see, during that time, they're with the body. They're with the body with the eyes closed, doing nothing. So their mind enters into a kind of a sleep with nothing. People who still have distracted minds get distracted when they sleep, and because they have no mindfulness to bring them back, they get caught up in concepts and find themselves in all sorts of strange situations. If they have strong concentration, they might actually leave their bodies and visit other realms or visit other people, but it's all conceptual. It has nothing to do with mindfulness. Lucid dreaming is based on concepts. It's based on sights and sounds and smells. It's based on seeing those as people, places, and things. A self-aware person would be aware of their reality, not the dreams. They wouldn't dream. Next question.
Does Buddhism agree with the use of science and the scientific method in the acquisition and validation of knowledge? Does Buddhism approve of the implementation of this knowledge in the form of agriculture, medicine, etc.?
Again, not my field. One of the rules is if it doesn't have anything to do with what I teach, and I'm not going to answer questions. What do you think about this? Because it makes me think too much. Sorry, they're valid questions often. It's just I can't go there. I can't go that far. Sorry. That's an interesting one too. The whole thing about science. Next question.
How do you deal with intrusive thoughts? Is there any advice you can give on how to still the mind further? I have learned that you must not grasp onto a thought, but also that you must not push it away. Is there anything else you can add to that? Thank you.
Well, in Vipassana practice, thoughts are not intrusive. Thoughts are an object of meditation. We don't give advice on stilling the mind. We give advice on being aware of the mind and being mindful of the mind. Because that's the way to truly still the mind, when the mind understands itself, understands reality. In fact, you should grasp onto the thought. Mindfulness has the function of grasping the thought, not letting it waver. So it is just a thought, it's not something else. Someone's responding. Oh, Robin, you're responding.
Pardon?
You put a response to that one.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I've been trying to go through, and if I saw videos that you had made in the past that kind of sort of answered it, I put them up there just for a little extra thoughts on a particular subject.
Nice. Next question.
Are hell beings to be understood literally or figuratively? Does someone really expect to have such enormous torture if he, by delusion, commits unwholesome actions?
Yes, literally. Next question.
That was a short one. In Spanish, verbs may have the person implicit in it. I, you, they, etc. I'd like to use the mantras in Spanish. Should I find words that don't imply any person? When you use thinking, feeling, are you using nominalized verbs or the verbal idea? Thanks.
Right. Actually, the original Pali is nominalized, I believe. I've never heard that word, but that makes sense. The subject is implicit, just as in Spanish. Gachami. Gachami means I go, I walk. So it's actually fine to use that. Mahasi Sayadaw talks about this. He says there's no problem there. It's not a problem. It's not like you don't have to worry that it's creating a self or it's reflecting on the self. It's a means, a tool, an artifice even, to keep the mind with the object, to grasp what's really happening. So saying I walk, well, in English it would be too much. In Spanish and Pali and so on, it makes perfect sense and can actually be helpful. to refer to keep you with what's really going on. So yes, go ahead and do that. I walk, I think, if it's implicit.
You have talked about the attainment of magical powers. Besides being besides the point, by what methods have they been attained, and what has been said of requirements in practice, typically speaking?
That's more of a question. That's the kind of question you should ask on our Buddhist forum, buddhism.stackexchange.com. We've actually answered several questions in that regard, but it's too broad of a question anyway. On that site, it would get flagged probably as too broad. You have to give a specific example, like how do you become clairvoyant according to Buddhism, or how do you remember your past lives, which I answered according to Buddhism. Next question.
Bhante, a student in my math class asked me, what are the consequences of lying? It was easy for me to understand about what I have been able to experience in this life, but do you know of stories of how lying specifically affects future rebirths?
Robin, could you also be thinking here of ones that might make good videos? Just
Sure.
if you see one that you really think would make a good video, let me know as well too.
Sure.
So we can sort of say, hey, let's do a video about this one.
Okay.
Okay. Stories of how lying specifically affects future rebirth. Yeah, there's a really good one. Malika, who is the queen. I always get these people mixed up. I didn't go to Buddhist Sunday school. Queen Malika. Sawadee. Yeah, so she was the queen, the wife of the queen of King Pasenadi in the time of the Buddha. Pasenadi was a bit of a dimwit. He wasn't the wisest king, not like Bimbisara. And anyway, he had a wife who was a great Buddhist. Just a second. Sorry, I had to close my window, so it's heating up in here. Do you hear the air conditioning?
No.
Okay. So, but Malika had done something really, really bad. It wasn't just about lying, but she lied about doing something. She was in her bathroom one day, and the dog came in and started interacting with her sexually, and she allowed it to continue, or she was kind of enjoying it. And the king saw them and was understandably grossed out and kind of pissed off, or that's the technical term, I think, was upset by it. But the queen, so he yelled at her, and he was probably going to behead her or something like that, whatever kings do when that sort of thing happens. But she laughed at him, and she said, "Oh, king, this is the nature of that bathroom. It has this weird property that whenever anyone goes in there, the light reflects in such a way that it makes it look like the person is doing something terrible." And he wouldn't believe her, but she said, "Well, then go in and you go in and check it out." And so he walks in, and she starts shouting. She says, "Oh, king, what are you doing fornicating with that goat?" And the king, because he's a bit of a dimwit, he believes her, and he says, "Oh, well, it must really be that way." He's confused, but he doesn't suspect this woman of lying. But she feels horrible for it. And she goes to her death carrying that secret. And as a result of that, she's born in hell. But throughout her life, she had done so many good deeds that Pasenadi, of course, thought she had gone to heaven. And so he goes to ask the Buddha what. He says, well, I'll go and ask the Buddha where she went when she passed away. And the Buddha realizes that if he is to tell the truth to Pasenadi is going to get really upset to the point where he's going to lose all faith in the Buddha, because there's no way he'll believe the Buddha when the Buddha says she went to hell. So the Buddha makes a determination in his mind, and the power of his mind allows it so that the king forgets the question that he was going to ask. And so he shows up at the monastery and talks to the Buddha and says, for the life of me, I can't remember what I was going to ask. And he leaves. And as soon as he leaves and is on his way back, he remembers, oh, I was going to ask about Malika. Oh, well, I'll ask tomorrow. And for 7 days he does this. And for 7 days the Buddha uses his power of mind and maybe his power of conversation to keep the king from asking this question until the 7th day. Malika, having spent 7 days in hell, 7 human days, which was probably a lot longer according in the hell realms. I'm not sure which way it goes. But anyway, spending 7 days in hell, tortured awfully. Then because of the goodness that she had done, she went the other way and was reborn in heaven as an angel. And so on the 7th day, then the Buddha didn't make his determination, and Pasenadi came to visit him and said, oh, for 7 days I've been meaning to ask you this question, and I keep forgetting. I just want to know where my queen went. And the Buddha said, oh, well, she was reborn in heaven. The king says, well, of course she was. Where else would she have been reborn? And he's happy and goes on his way. So there's one story for you on the power of lying. It makes you feel really bad inside. I'm sure there's other stories, I can't think of them. Anyway, we're not here to tell stories. Next question.
This is an opinion question. Do you feel like an opinion question? Your opinion on monks advocating untraditional views versus, untraditional doctrinary views, like Venerable Nanavira or Venerable Nanananda. To what extent is the term heretic applicable within the Theravada tradition? And is there any danger of excessive dogmatism?
Burn them at the stake, no? Excessive dogmatism. No, there's no danger of excessive dogmatism. The danger of excessive dogmatism is in the nature of the dogma. If the dogma is wrong, then you have a problem. And that's the sort of thing that Jnanavira was getting at. He believed that the Theravada dogma was against the Buddha's teaching, I think. But yeah, I don't give opinions on people or other things. I don't know exactly how you define the word heretic. I mean, I know what it means, but I'd like to look at the definition and say, well, does that exact definition apply here? But someone who believes things contrary to the doctrine accepted by the Theravada commentaries, it's probably heretic. It isn't really a Theravadan. I think the point is they're not heretic, they're just not a Theravadan Buddhist. That's all. It's that you are or you aren't. If you follow the teachings, if you agree with the teachings, then you are. If you don't, you're not. There's no such thing as being excessively dogmatic, I don't think. So as I said, the only danger is if it's wrong. Obviously, if you adhere to something that's wrong, then the stronger you adhere to it, the worse that is. So there is that. But that's the only danger. I mean, given that we're not sure that these texts are right, it's not worth being terribly dogmatic about them. I would say that.
I'm at a point. Oh, I'm sorry. Next question.
Why don't we do a video about this one?
Okay.
It's a simple question, but it's kind of one of these nice personal ones where people dealing with self-esteem and so on. I don't know. Let's go for it. We'll try it. Because if I have one video a week, it's kind of lame. So let's have some more. Go ahead.
I'm at a point in life that I do not consider myself a good person. I'm constantly stressed and have attitudes towards people who are not friendly. Today I need spirituality. However, I have a hard time believing that I can overcome this phase.
I have a video, right, on low self-esteem. No, we won't do a video. Okay, well, Vanessa, you are not a person, so you can't be a good or a bad person. You are what you are in any given moment, and that changes from moment to moment. We are none of us one thing. The moment when you decided to ask that question and look for help, admit to yourself that you have something bothering you and so on. I think there was a lot of good involved in that. So you have a goodness in you. In that moment, you were a good person. And that's important because it means you should not consider yourself a person at all. You should not consider yourself a good person. You should not consider the person at all. You should consider the present. You should consider every moment and reflect upon your deeds, reflect upon your speech, reflect upon your thoughts as you do them, before you do them, after you do them, and adjust yourself accordingly. No matter how deep of a pit you're in, the only solution is to climb out, is to find your way out. And so there's no benefit to calling yourself one thing or another thing, or labeling yourself anything. Being constantly stressed out is fine. That's a valid object of meditation. This is something that we can work with. It's a reason why people come to meditate, is because they see they have lots of stress. If you learn to deal with that stress, you'll find that you have fewer unfriendly attitudes towards people. You'll find that you're more friendly, that you're less prone to anger and hostility. So the key, what you're seeing is actually good. You're seeing the causal relationship here between your stress and the bad attitudes, the unfriendly attitudes. Now, if you could just break that, change that, and deal with the stress in a more beneficial way, in a more harmless manner, you'd be able to avoid all of that unpleasantness and the guilt that was involved there, and the feeling that you're a bad person and so on. So let's focus on the stress and look at that stress and try to deconstruct it so that you experience it moment by moment. That's what this meditation is designed to do. And so read my booklet on how to meditate and practice it. It's not my teaching. It's the teaching that has been passed on, we would say, from the Buddha himself. And guaranteed 100% that if you put it into practice, it will help you deal with the stress in a way that doesn't lead you to hurt yourself or others. That would have made a good video.
You can't make videos once, just from the show itself? Or you have to turn on a different camera or something?
I can't remember. I used to be able to, but I think YouTube changed something. Because it's like a 2-hour video, so you have to download the whole video and then cut it up and then re-upload it. But there was, for some reason, I think it's just such poor quality that it didn't. I can't remember. It's very poor quality. The hour-long, 2-hour-long video. Okay, we got through a significant number of the canned questions. Why don't we go to the live ones now, and then we'll just finish up with the live ones here. We'll finish up for the week. So, from top to bottom.
Meditation helped me a lot, but I still do suffer from anxiety attacks occasionally. Sometimes when I'm in a public place, I have attacks. I find it difficult to meditate on such occasions on the feeling because it's so overwhelming. What can I do?
Well, keep going. I mean, keep working at it. If it helped you a lot, then it has the potential to keep helping you. There's no switch that just turns off your problems. You have to work at them. So if you say it helped you, then this isn't categorically different. These anxiety attacks that you have um, are problems that you can solve. They may take years or even lifetimes to solve, but they're a part of the practice. So finding it difficult to meditate on such occasions doesn't mean you can't meditate on such occasions. Eventually it gets easier. Eventually the anxiety subsides. Anxiety is less. Just keep going. Be patient. So Rome wasn't built in a day.
Thank you for doing this. I have a small question. What's the best way to keep your eyes when meditating? Closed, half open, or open?
Doesn't really matter. We do it closed. There's no reason to keep them open, right? There's you consider how many things you have to deal with in your own mind during meditation. The things that you see with your eyes open is just adding to your problems. So once you get stronger in meditation, you might open your eyes as a test to be, can I still do it with my eyes open, right? It's like, okay, now I can bicycle with training wheels. Now I'll take the training wheels and try it. Okay, now I can do that. Now I'll try letting go of the handlebars and balancing without that. Okay, now I'll try to stand up. But in the beginning, you need training wheels, and keeping your eyes closed is a part of that. It's easier to meditate with your eyes closed. Although, on the other hand, it might actually be more difficult in certain cases because it forces you to look inside, but that's in a good way. It forces you to focus more on one thing. It's easier to keep your eyes open only because it means you don't have to really meditate. In the beginning, with your eyes open, well, you can be distracted. You can allow yourself to get lost in it's a release, which is not really good for meditation. But if you can stay focused even with your eyes open, that's more difficult than doing it with your eyes closed. So better to keep them closed, I would say.
I guess asubha is conceptual, but monks during Buddha's time achieved enlightenment by meditating on corpses. Is this done by feeling one's own body and realizing it is not very different from a decaying corpse?
Well, you start by meditating on a corpse, and your mind becomes very pure. So it's a samatha meditation. But based on that samatha meditation, then you focus on the aggregates. You focus on experience, which is not asubha at all. Asubha is just the basis. They became enlightened because it allowed their minds to become very clear, and then they were able to reflect on the Buddha's teaching and see it clearly because of their state of mind. People who practice samatha, who have become accomplished in samatha meditation, have a very easy time in vipassana meditation. They can go through the stages very quickly.
How should one perceive other people and beings if there is no self? Would it be beneficial towards the practice to treat others as oneself? Treat others as oneself if we're not different entities?
We are not different entities?
Oh,
Maybe?
yeah. Would it be beneficial towards the practice to treat others as oneself if we're not different entities?
Missing an apostrophe. I don't know, just practice. Meditate. Read my booklet. Sorry. It's a bit confusing question.
Well, maybe it's if I have no self, do you have no self either?
Well, sure. I mean, but okay, it's why are you thinking these things? Just say to yourself, thinking, thinking, wondering, wondering. Let it go. Hello,
Bhante,
Charlie Brown.
sorry.
I got a gift from Charlie Brown, and I thought that was I spent a year of my life reading only Peanuts comics. Anyway, that has nothing to do with anything. But thank you, Charlie Brown, for the gift. Anyway, go ahead.
Bhante, when thinking about mindfulness and meditation, are they more like talking about the same thing, fruit, or more like talking about two different things, apples and oranges? I'm struggling with balancing mindfulness and meditation during the day.
Well, the word meditation is slippery. It's meditation is fruit. The word fruit is the word meditation. The word fruit is to the word meditation. Does that work? No. Right. The word mindfulness is to meditation as the word apples is to fruit. Sort of. Mindfulness is a type of meditation. It's a aspect of meditation. So our type of meditation uses mindfulness as its main quality to be developed. Meditation can mean anything. It can mean thinking about something. It can mean clearing your mind of all thoughts. It can mean seeing things as they are, but it can also mean not seeing anything at all. Struggling with balancing mindfulness and meditation. Well, don't worry about meditation. If you've got sati, which actually doesn't exactly mean mindfulness, but that which we translate as mindfulness, if you've got that, that's all you need. You don't need to worry about meditation. If you mean specifically the difference between formal meditation and informal, daily moment-to-moment mindfulness, then both they support each other. If you do one without the other, if you're not mindful during the day, your formal meditation will suffer. If you're not doing formal meditation, it's quite difficult to do informal meditation, informal mindfulness throughout the day.
I think you might have answered one of the canned questions too, because someone was asking for you to explain the difference between mindfulness meditation and vipassana meditation. Did that pretty much answer it?
Yeah.
I constantly face huge problems that arise because my mother and girlfriend are averse to each other. Meditation helps me, but I'm still attached and suffer a lot. I have scheduled my marriage and also feel that I should care for my mother. Can you advise me?
I have to be careful because I actually get in big trouble if I encourage someone to get married. It's just that we can't get involved in romantic relationships. It's not that we specifically frown upon them. It's just that as monks, we're not allowed to get involved with marital affairs. That's not what you're asking. It's just, it's actually just a silly thing. Meditation helps you. That's good. But you're still attached and suffer a lot. That's not good. Again, you're dealing with the suffering of samsara. You've made your bed and now you have to lie in it. Or you're making your bed. You get married, that's part of samsara. It's complicated. There's no solution. There's no answer. That aspect of life complicates things. You have a specific situation where you're trying to do something good in terms of respecting your mother, but you find that, lo and behold, that conflicts with your desires. from my point of view, it's easy to see what is more important, and that's the good deeds. Now, helping your mother isn't the only necessary good deed, but there's much more benefit to be had from caring for your mother than there is from getting married. Just in terms of goodness, what good really comes from getting married? Now, you might say, but I love her and I want to get married and I'm going to get married. Then I say, okay, suppose you're going to get married and there's nothing we can do about that. Then we have another question. What do you do when your fiance, your wife, let's move to the point where she is your wife, doesn't get along with your mother? It's not really your problem. Right? Your problem is your relationship with your mother and your relationship with your girlfriend. Isn't that enough problems? Why do you have to deal with their relationship? If you're looking at it from the point of view of, my mother tells me I shouldn't get married to this woman, should I listen to my mother? Then you've got a couple of things to consider. The first one is keeping your mother happy. The second one is listening to your mother's advice. It may be that your mother sees something that you don't. It's just as likely that she's just paranoid or bigoted or whatever. Who knows what the problem is, because people are people. So then you have this problem of whether your relationship would become strained if you choose to do something against her. It's a tough issue. I mean, I feel for you. I'm glad I'm not getting married. But that's really where your problem is. Your problem is in one person wants one thing, two people want one thing, and another person wants another, and it's balancing the wants and needs of these three individuals. From a Buddhist point of view, the solution, the way to solve this, is to work on these three people, to have these three people work on their desires, their wants, and their needs. If you can give up your desire, your want, your need for this marriage, then you can love both these people without being attached to them, and then you don't need to get married. You can love these people and all these people. If you become an arahant, become enlightened, then you've solved the problem. If your mom becomes enlightened, then you've solved the problem. If your girlfriend becomes enlightened, you probably still haven't solved the problem, but it's gotten easier because she won't marry you. But you see, that would be ideal. Or ideal is if all three of you became enlightened, right? But barring that, the principle stands that the solution lies in finding where the strong attachments are, identifying them, helping each other to identify them for yourselves, and then working on them. Maybe your mother's so full of hatred and bigotry. Maybe your girlfriend is, let's say your girlfriend is white and your mother is black, and your mother hates all white people, or your girlfriend's black and your mother's white, and whatever. Maybe you're female and you're John. Maybe your girlfriend is poor and your mother's rich. Your mother hates poor people, or etc., etc. And so it could be that your mother has these horrible hatred inside of her that really has to be addressed. You won't, in that case, you wouldn't gain any benefit from going along with her wishes. But more importantly, is that's where you have to address it. You really have to help your mother deal with that. And part of that is going to be tough love and being patient with her tirades and her scolds and so on. If, on the other hand, you and this girl are having sexual intercourse 20 times a day, and you're not going to work as a result, and this woman does drugs, and she's encouraging you to do drugs, well, then maybe the problem is with you and with this girl, and then you would focus on your own insanity and your own your own desires, your own attachments. Now, most likely neither of these is the case, but there are cases where you can focus on one person or the other. You can't be biased towards yourself, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't be biased, or you shouldn't focus in one point or another. If your mother really, truly is the problem, or her attachment is strong, focus there. If your attachment is strong, focus there. Try and examine the situation and find out, try and get a sense of ask yourself, what reduction of attachments, what level, what would need to give before this could be, what is the most likely sort of letting go that could occur, and then work towards that in order to solve this problem. What would it take, and find the easiest solution. I'd say that's a fairly Buddhist way of looking at it. Of course, from a core Buddhist point of view, what are you doing getting married? Yeah. That's the monk in me talking.
When I meditate, I sometimes feel that the reality is neither the past nor the future, but the present moment. I then feel the speed at which the present moment changes while observing the breath. Is this a correct practice of vipassana?
Have you read my booklet? The correct way of practicing vipassana, from my point of view, is as is taught in my book on how to meditate. If you're doing that, you're practicing correctly, period. That's all I have to say about that. What you feel is just a feeling. That's not correct practice. It doesn't have anything to do with correct practice. Correct practice is how you act, how you practice in regards to that.
What are the benefits of celibacy?
Not having sex.
No mother-in-law problems?
No mother-in-law problems. No sexually transmitted diseases. No pregnancy. No attachment. No desire. No cultivation of addiction. That's really it.
Since starting your teaching, I am dreaming, sleeping worse, way more than usual. Is this a side effect of the mind explaining something is wrong?
It's common in the beginning. Like I just said, meditation will help you dream less, but in the beginning it's going to be the opposite, because all the stuff that you're suppressing inside and kind of avoiding is going to all come up. So yes, definitely in the beginning, it's a sign that stuff is happening, and in the beginning it's a good sign. Not exactly a good sign, it's a sign that you've got stuff that needs to be dealt with, and are dealing with it more so than before. You'll find that doesn't last very long. Eventually your dreams subside and become less frequent if you practice consistently. But that's more of a beginner problem. It's certainly common. It's what's to be expected. Just don't cling to them or worry about them or encourage them. Let them go. They're just dreams.
Do you have time for 2 short questions?
All right, but that's it.
Okay.
Are they video good ones?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
Short questions, short answers. 2 people on Moderator are asking basically the same question about I pay attention to the rising and the falling, but how about the little tiny space in between? Do I do anything with that?
No, you don't need to. It's an artifice. The noting is not exactly mindfulness, or it's not the wisdom that we're looking for. So it's much more like a paddle that whacks you back when you get off track, or it keeps you balanced. As long as you keep whacking, hitting your mind back, you're going to stay in the center. So that doesn't have to be constant. You see, it's only if there's a rhythm, then you can stay more or less on track. Or it's something that pushes you in the right direction, and you just need that rhythm. It's not a rhythm, but you need some kind of it has to become habitual. See, what we're doing is cultivating habits. That's all. It doesn't mean the more you note, no, the faster you note, the better. So that you don't need to do anything with that. If you notice, so there'll be rising and falling, one breath rising, falling. Often there's a space between that and the next rising. In that space, we, for an advanced meditator, once they can actually see that pause, we'll have them say sitting, rising, falling, and then focus on the whole body and say to yourself, sitting, rising, falling, sitting. That's because that's a longer pause, and so it is worth to put something in there, but not between the rising and the falling. That's too small. It's not necessary.
And then one inane question of mine.
All right.
In your how to meditate videos, it looks like you're wearing a brown towel on your shoulder.
I know, I went through a phase
of wearing a brown towel?
Well, my teacher wears a towel on his shoulder.
Oh.
I thought it would be kind of like a uniform kind of thing.
Oh.
I used to do that. I used to have a shower towel on my shoulder. That's a good idea to have a towel. In Asia especially, you use it to wipe your face when you sweat. You use it to flick away the insects. You use it to, after you have a shower, to dry yourself. It's just one of those useful things. Haven't you read the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
No.
Oh. Wow.
They wear brown towels on their shoulders too?
No comment. You'll have to look it up. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy towel. You'll find the answer there.
I'll look that up.
Yeah. But my teacher wears a towel on his shoulder, so he's a fruit who really knows where his towel is. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Wishing you all peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering. And hope to see you, many of you, in the future. Oh, another thing I didn't mention is, for those of you on YouTube who haven't been to my Facebook page, we've got a live meditation group going 3 times a day. If you go to meditation.sirimangalo.org, you can join us in daily meditation. We have a meditation group. So come out, and it's a good way to encourage each other and to give ourselves a little kick. Having that, making a determination and telling us, broadcasting to other people that now I'm doing meditation, it holds you to it. It's a good way to provide encouragement, to see other people meditating as well and say, oh, we're all meditating together. Seems like a really good thing. So come out. Just one more announcement there. Anyway, have a good night. Be well. Peace.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Robin.